not look like anything the way I would fabricate it. Now there's a second issue about the shoulder area that I want to go to, and we'll return to this. The hair pattern is very, very curious. It's very, very dense on the top of the shoulder. It's very dense on the back of the arm, but it's almost bare in this area, and the little flap above the armpit. Greg, next one should be hair patterns. Oh, now this is another ape suit that I did do. This is typically how they're done, and you do not see any of the transitions of thickness and thin unless we specifically, like I put a kneecap on it, which is a bare kneecap. It does have a bare chest, doesn't show very well. And of course we blend hair from the head to the bare face. But other than that, the hair is pretty much consistent all around. That is typical for any type of a suit or fabrication, because if we make the hair real choppy, uneven, blotchy, some of it falling out, people think that's just poor quality fabrication, and then they fire you from the job, even though they're biologically real. The only time you can do that is if you're actually making a photo double of a real animal, and you have the picture in front of you, and the real animal's got a blotch of fur missing, so you make a blotch of fur missing on your suit. And you say, yeah, it looks like the real animal. But if you're not matching an exact specific photograph of a real animal, you would never do that. It looks like bad workmanship. We don't want to get fired. So we keep the hair fairly consistent and smooth. On the Patterson figure, it's not consistent and smooth. The next one, please. I wish these things would show up better. What we have on the right here is a real mature chimpanzee who did occasional Hollywood work. His name is Karunja. I wish it would show better, but he has a hair pattern that is virtually identical to what we see in the Patterson film, with a very dark mass at the top of the shoulder, a lot of bulky hair on the back of the arm, a bare spot coming down toward the armpit, and literally a bare area across the arm as well. You can see also on his leg, because this part of the leg has no hair at all. It's completely, literally hairless, but he's got strong areas here, blotchy ones here. He's got hair here, it's blotchy here going into the kneecap. In real biology, we see a lot of blotches, we see a lot of changes of density, changes of structure, thickness, everything else. We see hair missing, we see hair unkept. All of that is real, natural biology. We see all of it on the Patterson subject. And again, I apologize, you can't see this more clearly. I wish I could. So we see various patterns and structures in the hair on this subject, which clearly look much more natural than anything that would be fabricated. Testing, okay, we got it again. I'll try not to walk on it. So when I was studying this, not only in the armpit area where I was studying the structure and how it would be compared to a suit, I was also studying the issue of the hair patterns and finding out that the hair patterns are extremely natural in their form, very much contrary to almost anything that would be done on a suit. So for me, that was one of the strongest indications that what we are looking at really is something biologically real. Let's go to the next one. I'll show you. We've got Karunja here. You know, you can see it a little bit better at least. We can see some of the irregularity in the hair pattern. Like he's got some bald spots coming down on the arm here. Some of the bicep area is completely blank. It's kind of spotty coming into the arms here and such. So it's a very irregular hair pattern. The leg right here, there's absolutely no hair on the leg and the thighs. It's very blotchy and irregular. This is natural, and this is what we see in the Patterson film. And this is something that we would never normally do for any type of a costume or effect unless we were actually matching a photo double of a real animal that someone had shown us, which is not the case with the Patterson film. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This will be next one there. A while back, I was with my wife. She was at the beach filming a music video for her purposes, and I was kind of along as a second cameraman. And I happened to notice this gentleman wading out into the surf, and I noticed something very, very curious about it. And in particular, he has this wonderful anatomical structure here on each side of his back. It looks like a rather massive bulge of substance there. And I thought, this looks very familiar. I've seen that somewhere before. And sure enough, on the back of the Patterson subject, right below the armpit, we have the curvature of shadow and the highlight above it. Same thing, like a very pocket of fat that we have there. Another thing that was curious, and it shows a little stronger perhaps than the second one where I bumped up the contrast, is here we have a torso, we have a shadow line going right across there. And on the subject there, right above the area that's generally considered the buttocks area, there's a shadow that runs right across it. And on this subject, I don't know how well you can see it, might be in the next one. I've got a second one of this wonderfully cooperative gentleman here. Where we have a shadow that runs straight upward. It's almost like an inverted T, which we do see on that subject as well. Let's try the next one. There you can see. Yeah, this might do it a little bit better. So here again, we have this curvature that comes in under the arm into the torso, going in that way. We have a curvature going across there. We have a heavy shadow in the small of the back, and then another line that's going right up the spine. We also have a curious shadow right in the center of the back of the neck at the top of the shoulder area. A shadow in the center and a highlight on the side. And on the subject here, we have a shadow in the center, highlight on the side. All very, very natural anatomy for the subject. So when I look at the back of the subject in the Patterson film, what I see is something which reminds me tremendously of very, very real anatomy. And thankfully, this gentleman was kind enough to come into my life at the right time when I had a camera so that I could record it for posterity and make those comparisons, because the comparisons, especially when you can see the pictures a little clearer, the comparisons are actually quite eerie, that the anatomical structure is so much the same. Now, I know there's a conventional thinking that the subject in the Patterson film, if it is real, is something which is, like most wild creatures, we assume is very strong, very agile, has excellent muscle tone, stronger than human beings, in better physical shape and everything. That is the common assumption, but in the case of this particular subject in the Patterson film, I actually have come to believe that it may very well be the opposite. This lady is getting on in her years. She's not in the best. Wow. That is unsensitive switch. This lady is getting on in her years. She is not in the best of health. She's a little bit overweight. And what I've been finding in looking at the film is that I strongly suspect that one of her shoulders is carried lower than the other. She literally drops her shoulder down, and she doesn't have a lot of muscle tension in her right arm. It kind of swings loosely back and forth, and even the wrist kind of swings loosely. Whereas compared on the other arm, the left arm, when she's walking, she's kind of pumping a little bit more like a power walker would, back and forth. But this arm is kind of swinging in a very, very relaxed way. It would be very, very unusual to imagine that someone impersonating an ape would be impersonating an atrophied shoulder that isn't really in full prime and is kind of drooping, and one arm that was kind of swinging loosely as if it didn't really have quite all the muscle tension. So what we have again is some very, very strange configurations about the anatomy at the back of the torso, the arm, the shoulder, that are very, very strongly positive indicators of real biology, something that we're really looking at. And then we have to again go to the very opposite and say, okay, but what if it's a suit, somebody faked it, somebody made a suit and it looked like that? So let's just take that argument for a minute. Because that's what I have to do whenever I'm doing an analysis. I have to look at it and say, okay, yeah, fine, that's real, and that's real, but we make suits to look like things that are real. So what if we want to make a suit look like that?